Hello, good evening, everyone. This is Kiran Mutha coming live to you from New York. In today's Think India Facebook Live event, we have a very eminent speaker speaking about very current topic. Today's topic is Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh, a way forward. And the speaker who will be speaking today is Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain sir. I'll quickly introduce about Hasnain sir. General Hasnain sir is Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Vishishta Seva Medal, Bar. Through his 40 years of illustrious career, General Hasnain has served in turbulent environment and hotspots, from Sri Lanka to Siachen Glacier, from Northeast to Jammu and Kashmir, and in UN operations from Mozambique to Rwanda. He has seen all crucial appointments. He has served 7 tours in Jammu and Kashmir, decorated in almost all of them. He knows Jammu and Kashmir conflict very comprehensively, and that's the reason he will be speaking today about Jammu and Kashmir. He has commanded Indian Army's Srinagar-based 15 Corps, which is today one of the foremost writer and analyst on Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan, Middle East, and transnational extremist violence. He is much sought after speaker, and you can ask me, I have to take his appointment. And he writes for major Indian newspaper, Times of India, Indian Express, Hindustan Times, Hindu, DNA, Deccan Chronicle, Asian Age. He has a strong academic background from Sherwood College, St. Stephen College, Royal College of Defence Studies, King's College London, Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, Hawaii. He has spoken at Lee Kuan Yew School for Public Policy, Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Indian Institute for South Asian Studies, all at Singapore. He has spoken at International Institute at Strategic Studies in London too. He is associated with Vivekananda International Foundation, Center for Joint Warfare Studies as a Distinguished Fellow, and on the Governing Council of Indian Council and World Affairs. So, apart from his military career, on 13 June 2018, President of India has appointed him as the Chancellor of Central University of Kashmir. In addition to that, in February 2020, he has been nominated by Prime Minister as a member of National Disaster Management Authority. He is also a member of Empowered Committee on Information Communication Handling at COVID-19 threat. So I'll hand it over to General Hasnain sir, and our format will be, he will speak for another 25-30 minutes. I'll encourage viewers to have their questions in the comments section of Facebook page, Facebook live feed, and we will take as many questions as possible. Over to you, Hasnain sir.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you. What a pleasure and honor to be connected entirely with all your listeners, your viewers, as part of Think India. Apart from what Kiran just told you, let me just add only one aspect of my experience, perhaps. I have commanded a company on the line of control in Poonch. I have commanded my unit at the Siachen Glacier. I come from Garhwal Rifles. I commanded for Garhwal Rifles at the Siachen Glacier. I was a staff officer in the rank of a full colonel. You are a senior staff officer somewhere. So I was the staff officer at South Kashmir in the Victor Force, which is the place which is entirely under tremendous pressure today. I commanded my brigade at Uri, the famous brigade at Uri. You see the film Uri, perhaps, also. I went on to command the division as a major general. I commanded at Baramulla, with the Uri also under me. Subsequently, I commanded the corps, my corps at Bhopal, one of the largest strike corps of India. And suddenly, overnight, I was requested or directed by the Army Chief, General V.K. Singh, to proceed to Srinagar and take charge of the Indian Army's 15 Corps, which looks after Kashmir. So you can see comprehensively over the last many years, I have been only involved with frontline soldiering as a part of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh, all of them. I've even commanded my unit as a part of Eastern Ladakh, also where the Chinese threat is. That is the reason why I have a fairly hands-on experience of this complete state, and especially related to the security issues. And one thing I do like to boast of is that I always felt that the most important thing for a commander here was memory. That each time you commanded, you went back with certain lessons and you did not forget them. You came back in a higher rank and a higher appointment, and you got the opportunity to implement those lessons once again. You relearned new lessons and went back and came back again. And this is what has been a part of my career, going in and out of Jammu and Kashmir. So we are at one more juncture today. In 2020, there have been recent, in the last 1 year, there have been a lot of developments. But I like to start, even though I've got 25, 30 minutes, I do like to start by trying to join a few dots for you. I don't presume everyone who's watching me at the moment, listening to me at the moment, is fully aware of what the dynamics of this so-called conflict are in Jammu and Kashmir. Firstly, it is not a conventional war. 30 years a conventional war cannot carry on. It is what is called a hybrid conflict. Now, if you understand what is a hybrid conflict, the domain, the complete spectrum of war or conflict has many, many segments. You can have physical, conventional activities like the ones which go on the line of control, or you can have other activities like the street demonstrations going on, the mob demonstrations going on in the hinterland of Kashmir. You can have infiltration, you can have terrorist activities, you can have information warfare and influence warfare, you can have cyber warfare, you can have financial warfare. The domains are endless. And hybrid conflict, what the perpetrator of hybrid conflict, in this case Pakistan, chooses to do is to select and combine many of these domains together. And unlike conventional war, where you go all out with your weaponry and your manpower, try and destroy the enemy, subjugate him, you can't do this in hybrid conflict. In hybrid conflict, you can use your forces up to a point. You can destroy a terrorist, you can kill a lot of your enemy on the line of control, etc. It doesn't resolve your conflict. It doesn't mean that you have won the conflict. The conflict is won comprehensively when you prevent your adversary from being effectively being able to intervene and interfere in your affairs, internal affairs of your state. And that's a very difficult call. It needs a thorough understanding of hybrid conflict, because hybrid conflict needs a counter, it needs a strategy which addresses every element of the hybrid conflict. And that can't happen with only employing the army or the CRPF or the police. It means what is called an all-of-government approach. It means every department of government and all people of the country have to be involved in this conflict. This is the first understanding which I would like you to take away from here. Because most people around the world think a conflict is a conflict, is a war. But all you need is to bring in an army and attempt to kill the terrorists. No, it doesn't work that way. Right? You see how the Americans came to Iraq, how they came to Afghanistan. And in Iraq, they managed to destroy, they managed to defeat the Iraqi army. They captured Saddam Hussein, they hung him to death finally. But yet victory was elusive. Such a huge army, it was elusive because fourth generation warfare, hybrid conflict came into being, terror came into being, all kinds of other domains came inside. The whole aspect of Islamic radicalism came into this, and you found that it was an unwinnable war, and the Americans had to withdraw by 2011. So that's a little bit of an explanation I want you to keep in mind. Number one. Number two, 1989, when the war started, when the conflict, the so-called hybrid conflict, started in Jammu and Kashmir, it was essentially Pakistan's effort to take revenge against India for what happened in 1971. It was a thing called the Zia Doctrine, which brought this into effect. And they said they have the patience to fight it out slowly. They knew that India is much superior economically, militarily, and therefore Pakistan cannot defeat India. But they can definitely equate themselves with India if they went nuclear. So they went nuclear. You saw over the period of time, and by 1998, when India went nuclear, they also went nuclear. And when two nuclear states face each other, one may have one bomb and the other may have 10 bombs. Asymmetry somehow is equated. Right? A country like India, sensible, stable country like India, which is aspiring only good things for its people, doesn't want a bomb thrown on one of its cities. Right? Although we have the capability to throw 10 bombs back at Pakistan. But we cannot go by the argument that maybe Pakistan has the acceptability of absorbing those 10 bombs. That's irrational. Okay. That's one aspect. Second thing was Pakistan felt that they had the capability to interfere with India because India has got certain fault lines. What are these fault lines in India? They are ethnic, they are all kinds of demographic fault lines. Regional, linguistic, caste-based, and most important, religious. So if you can bring about religious divisiveness in India, caste divisiveness, ethnic and regional divisiveness, it will only weaken India. It won't allow it to achieve its own aspirations. And that is, in a sense, in Pakistan's strategy against India. It felt that it could use Jammu and Kashmir as a trigger from where to start this whole process of enhanced divisiveness within India. They fight a sustained long war, which is not very expensive, not too much of expenditure on training a few terrorists and inducting them, carrying out information warfare by influencing the people in Kashmir, keeping them alienated from the rest of India. All this is a part of this strategy, hybrid strategy, which essentially means keeping the line of control alive, doing infiltration, having an optimum number of terrorists inside Kashmir at any time, having a strong leadership available there, supporting the separatist movement politically, economically, psychologically, promoting the media through information warfare, and creating more and more alienation, having financial networks and other networks of overground workers who can assist in this entire effort. All this comes together to form this kind of hybrid conflict. It started in 1989. From 1989 to 2020, 30 years, it has gone on through a dynamic process. It's not as if it's just a single one strategy which has gone on. It has gone through ups and downs. India has done very well many times. India has done very well. We have reduced the strength of terrorists from 6,000, 7,000 to not more than 250 to 300 today. But final victory eludes us. As I told you, primarily because this is a hybrid conflict. That's the reason for it. Okay, if I've introduced that to you, things started changing. If you ask me, actually, the abrogation of Article 370, to my mind, should have been done in 1972, after we won the conflict in 1971. That was the best time to do it. We had won the war. Pakistan was in no position to interfere, do anything. There was total consensus among the political community. We came on that situation once again in 1994, when Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, that time as the leader of the opposition, got together and passed the joint resolution in Parliament, 22nd of February 1994, declaring that the entire territory of Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, everything is a part of India. It's because of that declaration that today we always say we are laying claim on Pakistan occupied Kashmir and saying that it is an integral part of India. It's the strength of what we started from 1994. In 1994, we could have abrogated Article 370 if we so wished. We were under international pressure. Tremendous amount of pressure from the United States itself on human rights and all kinds of things like that. And there was total political consensus, which is such an essential thing to do, to take a major political initiative. The BJP, the Congress, all parties had come together to pass this resolution. But somehow we failed in IFL. Finally, it happened in 2019, 5th of August. But before that, there are a couple of events which need to be recounted to lead up to that. In 2008, the situation had changed quite drastically. We had reduced the strength of terrorists to a great extent. We were in the last year of attempts to find peace with Pakistan through the negotiated route. As you will know, there was a backroom diplomacy which was going on. 26/11 happened in Mumbai, and that put an effective end to this diplomacy completely. And there was a sea change in the nature of the conflict. I was commanding a division in Baramulla at that particular time. Thereafter, Pakistan upped the ante. Pakistan itself got hit hugely by radical extremists within Pakistan. So they were fighting the radical extremists within Pakistan. At the same time, they could not very effectively fight the hybrid conflict in Kashmir. Their attention was being taken away to Afghanistan, to what was happening internally in Pakistan. So they chose the more benign route of keeping the Indian armed force in the Indian army and the other security forces committed, focused to the roads through mass agitation, storm throwing, and things like that, while continuing to attempt infiltration to fill up more terrorists, carry out their terrorist acts. So this was primarily on the military front. Where India was lacking in these years was that we did not use the whole of government approach. We relied on the army, the security forces to come to eliminate the terrorists and create stability and then probably undertake a political initiative. It doesn't happen that way. You can bring the strength of terrorists down to 300, 250, 200, but the last terrorist doesn't get killed like this. With the border, which is virtually open, a lot of problems, the infiltration carries on all the time. So Pakistan was exploiting this, and this mass agitation techniques, tactics, that sort of put us back to a fair extent. And India is a pragmatic, sensible state which doesn't fire at demonstrators and kill them. Despite that, we lost 117 demonstrators were killed in 2010. The next very important thing is that around about 2012-13, we had gone through about 20 years, 22 years of this hybrid conflict. A new generation was emerging. Those who were born 87, 88, 89 were now 22, 23 years old, and they emerged, and they were not willing to be passive. They did not want the directions from Pakistan. They didn't want the directions of their own terrorist leaders like Syed Salahuddin, who was sitting in Muzaffarabad at that particular time. So Burhan Wani came into being, and you found Burhan Wani 2013 to 16 ruled the roost, and the whole focus shifted to South Kashmir. South Kashmir is the place where the local terrorist stronghold is very, very high. North Kashmir is primarily because of infiltration and because of the Pakistani terrorists coming inside and holding forth there. So there's a clear division between North and South Kashmir. South Kashmir is more dominated by local terrorists, and North Kashmir by foreign terrorists. And 2016, finally, Burhan Wani was killed. By that time, he had generated tremendous passion, and the coming of the new generation terrorism in Kashmir was characterized particularly by the linkages, external linkages of these people with Islamic radicals around the world, both with Pakistan, with the Middle East. Attempt was made to bring in the Al-Qaeda, which has never succeeded actually. The IS, Islamic State, which has also really not succeeded. But an effort was made to try and bring in a greater radical effect, a radical character to this entire terror movement. So if you understood that, 2016 was a bad year. In the end of 2016, we had suffered casualties ourselves. We had killed a lot of terrorists, but our ratio of the number of terrorists we killed and the number of soldiers we lost was almost 1:1, which never happens. It's never happened in the history of Jammu and Kashmir. It was that bad. But launched an operation called Operation All Out, and with improved intelligence, better coordination and cooperation between the forces, better counter-infiltration efforts, etc., we managed to bring it back to 1:5, which means we lose a soldier and kill 5 terrorists. That is the kind of thing we came to. And Pakistan was obviously upset by this entire thing. Our recovery had been pretty intense and pretty quick, and something had to be done by Pakistan to regain the initiative. You saw Uri taking place, you saw Nagrota taking place, you saw Pathankot before that happening. Before that, Mr. Modi had made a sincere effort to try and find peace with Pakistan politically. But 2015, the efforts which he made, this included the talks by Mr. Dowell in Bangkok, You found Mr. Sushma Swaraj's visit to Islamabad. You found Mr. Modi himself making a visit to Lahore and a surprise visit. And the sincerity of his efforts were not appreciated in Pakistan, and therefore the whole thing apple cart was upset. And 2018, you found more activities taking place. The assassination of Shudat Bukhari, for example, the editor of Rising Kashmir. Anyone who was supporting an Indian cause or was somewhere looking for anti-Pakistan cause, everyone was apparently eliminated. 2019 saw Pulwama, 40 CRPF men killed. Now, this was a major event. Before that, India had already launched the surgical strikes in 2016, and post Pulwama, we launched the Balakot strike and did not go the whole hog. It's not that we wanted war. We are a part of the international community. India does not want war. This sometime somewhere in the question, or I can respond to this in greater detail. But we started from 2016 effectively conveying the message that the so-called nuclear deterrence which Pakistan was assuming was incorrect. That India had a window below the nuclear deterrence, before the nuclear possibility of the use of a nuclear weapon. India had a window which it could exploit. It could surgically go by ground, it could go by air, and there are many other methods by which we can do it, which I did not talk about. So, with this happening, within 4 months, first of all, the new Modi government came in May, and within 3 months, you had a political initiative. Now, a lot of people think that political initiatives means only making concessions, but actually, this was a political initiative of a different kind. 5th of August, we made a political initiative in which we abrogated Article 370 and 35A. The biggest effect of this was that the idea of Azadi, or even the idea of a potential merger of Kashmir with Pakistan was ruled out. And now we can effectively play on the minds of the Kashmiris to tell them that there is no chance of this happening. Till the time Article 370 was there, 35A was there, and exclusivity was given to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. That has been removed effectively. That's the most important political and psychological message which has gone from here. But there were many other things which happened which most people are not aware of. A lot of things were happening in the run-up to 5th of August. Firstly, our intelligence agencies very, very professionally went after the networks. For years, the army had already been speaking about it, that there are networks in Kashmir which need to be countered. The army can't do it. We can kill terrorists. We can go after we can do counter-infiltration. We can ensure action on the line of control and things like that. But we can't take down the networks. It has taken a fair amount of effort, and I will not even claim that we have been fully successful yet. But the overground worker networks. Overground workers are those people who are working for the terrorists but are working above ground. They are the ones who come and meet me in my office and places like that, right? I may arrest them and produce them in front of a judge, but they will get released tomorrow because of lack of evidence. So, overground worker networks, you had the media networks, you had financial networks, so a lot of money coming in from all over the Middle East, from Pakistan, from the rest of India. There's no control on this. And in terrorism, if money is available, it's the biggest asset to the terrorists. So all this for these networks have been reasonably neutralized, although they still exist. The message from 5th of August to Pakistan was clear, that your options are running out. They haven't run out completely. They are running out. And Pakistan was also under pressure already financially. It had only $7 to $9 billion of foreign exchange reserves left. At the FATF, it was under FATF scanner and almost on the verge of being declared black under the FATF. Ultimately, it was declared grey. But now it has got a reprieve for 4 5 months because of the COVID-19 threat. What we have to remember is that Pakistan is still, despite whatever we may do to Pakistan, whatever we may say about Pakistan, Pakistan's strategic importance in the eyes of the international community remains there. It is a country without which the United States cannot fight in Afghanistan. It's a country which is very important for Saudi Arabia to balance Iran on its western flank. It's a very important country for China to build its access, its communication arteries to the northwest Indian Ocean. It's a very important country for Russia to ensure that the Central Asian area does not go rabidly radical. Oh, the importance is just tremendous for Pakistan. In India, most people do not appreciate this. In typical manner, we like to see that our adversary has to be less important, and only India is strategically important. No one denies India's strategic importance and the manner which India is located on the Indian Ocean. But remember, Pakistan is equally important for the world and for the international community. So much that we may do, we achieved a tremendous diplomatic victory internationally, went around the world, and no one supported Pakistan. I went to various countries myself. I spoke in Iran and other countries like that. And I found reasonable support, although there was a lot of questioning of India's actions, but reasonable support. Prime Minister Modi got the highest award, the state award in Kuwait, in UAE, even after the decisions were taken. President Trump supported India. The UK, France supported India in a very big way. UK did not support India in the manner in which we could have expected at that particular time. So diplomatically, reasonably good. Militarily, the period from 5th of August has been stable. The winter came. It was a heavy winter. Infiltration was not possible. COVID-19 came, February, March. Now, this is the time when Pakistan decided that they had to do something, or this game may just end for them in Kashmir. Their attention was already in Afghanistan with what was happening, and they could not afford to take away their attention from Kashmir. So, the end of the winter season, the melting of the snows, and it was important for Pakistan to immediately get into the game. Infiltration was the most important thing. Fill up the numbers in India. And that's why from North Kashmir, you found attempts at infiltration going on. You had that encounter which happened north of Kupwara, where we killed 5 terrorists, lost 5 of our very brave special forces men. We had a recent encounter in Handwara where we lost, unfortunately, commanding officer Colonel Sharma and 4 other soldiers with him, officers and men with him. So these are all efforts of infiltration. Handwara may be deep inside, but this was an infiltration track which had reached the jungles around Handwara, and against which 21 RR, the unit, was operating. So it's important for Pakistan to fill up the valley, North Kashmir particularly. There's an attempt going on to fill up North Kashmir from South Kashmir also. Because it was felt that the Indian army was getting the chance to focus entirely on South Kashmir. And it must spread the Indian army thin by ensuring that terrorist activities in North Kashmir are also of the same stature, same quality, the manner in which it's happening in South Kashmir. But North Kashmir does not have leaders. It doesn't have terrorist leaders. They've all been eliminated by the Indian army. So an effort is going on to try and bring those leaders in, to try and put them into safe houses and things like that. You may not be aware that in the month of April, 16 operations were conducted jointly by the police, the CRPF and the army, and managed to kill 30 terrorists. We lost a couple of our men, as I've already stated it. Hopefully the ratios will improve. These ratios are temporary at certain points in time, but the ratio will improve. But militarily, it is important that the line of control, that the infiltration across the line of control is thwarted, is neutralized. It's not only in Kashmir, it's happening through Jammu. Efforts are going on right from, I would say, from Kathua to Poonch. Efforts are going on because infiltration can take place, and then through various networks which still exist, it is possible to move into Kashmir, weapons, explosives, a few amount of personnel. The total number of personnel that Pakistan needs to move in to create a mayhem inside Kashmir is about not more than 50 to 70 terrorists in a year. If they can increase that number to 100, 110, it is a big achievement for them. We used to eliminate 2,100 terrorists as early as 2001. Today we are killing about 250 terrorists, 270 terrorists. This year we have killed more than 72 terrorists already. So militarily, this is the situation at the moment. An interesting aspect is that the COVID-19 lockdown is definitely coming to the assistance of the Indian security forces, our security forces. And because of lockdown, what happens is that our intelligence improves. The terrorists are forced to stay longer in certain safe houses, and The longer you stay in a safe house, the greater are the chances that you give away the information that you are there. And that's exactly how someone like Reyes, Naiku, and people like that have got eliminated. So that's as far as the military side is concerned. Now there are various other things connected to this. There is a huge effort to try and bring psychological and information warfare. This is something that Pakistan is very adept at. They've got the ISPR, which they use very effectively. By not having the 4G networks in Kashmir, we have denied Pakistan the capability of bringing in a lot of social media, a lot of videos and things like that. To my mind, that's an effective counter. Although there's a lot of hue and cry against India for not allowing a 4G in Kashmir, only allowing slow speed broadband in India. But then ultimately, security is the most important aspect. And unless you have security, there's no point going in and introducing this for social purposes and anything else like that. Politically, of course, the summer has come, and we would have probably seen by now some initiatives by the government of India, but we are still stuck at the moment with the COVID-19 focus of the government of India. What we perhaps need is a far greater footprint of development, a very strong footprint of governance, to ensure that the people are made very clear that their being with India is a major distinct advantage for them. And that's the way I look at Pakistan occupied Kashmir. India doesn't have to go to war to get back Pakistan occupied Kashmir. In the long term, we should develop the capability to influence the minds of the people there, who will want to look automatically at India as the benefactor and not at Pakistan, which is anyway going down the drain with the kind of economy that exists in Pakistan today. Not only the economy, the kind of divisiveness which exists in Pakistan itself today. So that is the current situation. What is needed at the moment is definitely a total control on the security environment, which the three forces, the police, the army, led by the army, the Rashtra Rifles, army, police, and the CRPF, along with the intelligence agencies, good coordination, good cooperation between them, and ensuring that infiltration is minimized. And I want to re-emphasize to you, it is not possible to bring it down to zero. It will not happen. The terrain is just too rugged. We don't have an obstacle system at that height of 14,000 feet, which can effectively counter the movement of terrorists. But if 70% of it is neutralized and eliminated, we would have still won the day. We have to ensure that numbers are down, and the terrorists should not be able to create a big event. Now, that's the last thing which I want to tell you. That, like Pulwama, like Uri, you can expect that if Pakistan really wants to grab the initiative in Kashmir, they should be planning at this time a major event. It could happen. It could be anything. It could be an IED. It could be an assassination. It could be the potential entry of terrorists into a headquarter or some other government establishment to create a lot of mayhem there, forcing India to respond. And India has already shown its resolve with the manner in which this is the most dangerous thing, which can set back the whole situation. We need to work in a hurry to ensure that our intelligence is impeccable, our response is excellent. The line of control, firing of the line of control should not worry us. It should not in any way create a problem in our thinking, because any amount of firing which Pakistan does on the line of control is only expending its own ammunition in its own economic condition. At the moment, they're not even in a position to be able to acquire that kind of ammunition. So we will, of course, neutralize all that. We will have a much more offensive way of conducting our defensive activity by making sure we do our fire drills and eliminating terrorist bases or launch pads in the vicinity of the line of control. All that activity will happen. But the most important thing is we must continue to ensure the stability inside and making sure that better governance, greater political initiatives, and outreach to the people to deliver the message that the people of Kashmir have a future with India. Thank you very much. I will end there.
Thank you, sir, for bringing us up to speed on the current situation and pointing out the important historical milestones that we've come across. Sir, I guess one big point that you pointed out was that there has been growing coordination between different forces and different agencies in the state. I think a question that is very pertinent at this point is because of the restructuring of the state into union territories now, post the abrogation of Article 370. Will that help in effective management of insurgency and maybe better coordination within the state between different agencies? Now, another thing that ties into this is what is the future of AFSPA in the state, and how do we include and utilize different government resources that we have at our disposal today along with this? Now, some of our viewers are also asking about AFSPA and its future in the state. I think that ties in well with this question.
Great. So I think the essential theme of the question seems to be AFSPA and also the aspect of coordination. First of all, let me kill the issue of coordination and then I'll come to AFSPA. AFSPA is my core subject of my study most of the time. This aspect of coordination, let me tell you, first of all, I have a very strong belief. The government of India took a decision to bifurcate Kashmir and not trifurcate it. I strongly believe that was the finest decision. A lot of people in Jammu may not agree with me, but I always say that Jammu and Kashmir are intrinsically linked. Solutions to Kashmir, the terror in Kashmir, the insurgency-like situation, the rebellion in Kashmir, whatever you may like to call it, resolving that can only happen through the Jammu route. The people of Jammu understands Kashmir best. No one understands Kashmir as well as the people of Jammu. There has to be a meeting of minds. There has to be a meeting of personalities, the populations, to understand that being together, looking at each other with a glad eye is the best solution to the way forward. Muh phirne se koi baat nahi hogi. You can't look different ways. Jammu and Kashmir have looked different ways for far too long. I have many suggestions on this, the aspects of the social aspects of bringing Jammu and Kashmir together by adopting towns and cities like Baramulla with Udhampur or Samba with Anantnag, and having the people meet each other more often. Different domains of people should exist, talk to each other. We should have people like lawyers, teachers, students, and young people. Gender issues being led by women, shopkeepers and businessmen, Vyapar mandals, they must all meet. When you have all this activity, everyone thinks that the solution to this problem lies in killing terrorists. That is an essential part. But we have to go beyond that also. We have to make sure the meeting of minds is there. And the whole economy of Kashmir is dependent on Jammu. A lot of things in Jammu are dependent on Kashmir. Tourism of the two parts is linked to each other. Those who go to Vaishno Devi like to also come to Kashmir. At the time of Amarnath Yatra, you can do two yatras at one time, things like that. These are very, very important aspects which we need to dwell upon from time to time. By keeping Jammu and Kashmir together and making it a union territory, first of all, now what has happened is that law and order has become a state issue, has become a central issue. So no longer is the Jammu and Kashmir police not answerable to the center also. Of course, it was answerable to the center also earlier, but now there's a closer affinity. Funding, the center can have a far greater control on funding, a far greater monitoring of funding, accountability of funding. Initiatives can be taken without going through the political route, right? And lots of these initiatives can be governance-based initiatives without having a political effect immediately. So I think by this bifurcation and Ladakh going away, Ladakh was not connected to this in any way. I've just recently been to Ladakh and I met the Lieutenant Governor there. I can tell you, Ladakh was quite happy. Their development problems, etc. Now they'll have their own budget and they've got their own administration and things like that. It'll all come of age in the near future. As far as AFSPA is concerned, I think no one has spoken of AFSPA after 5th of August. Maybe too early to speak about it. In the mind of the Kashmiri, ASPA seems to be one of the most draconian laws. And if you ask me, no Kashmiri, hardly any Kashmiri has read the ASPA. Not many people within the police or the state administration, even within the army, not many people have read ASPA. I have read it, chewed it, and absorbed it. 7 sections of it. Why has AFSPA created this impression and perception that it's a draconian law? And why are the world's and human rights agencies accusing India? And why is Pakistan given the fodder to do that? Simply because this law was introduced in 1990 on the basis of the AFSPA 1958 of Nagaland. And in 1990, it was brought in a hurry. 4th of July, within 2 to 3 months of the whole problem starting after the eviction of the Pandits on 19th of January 1990, 4th of July 1990, ASPA got introduced. If you read meticulously at the 7 provisions and read the language, you'll realize it's the language of the 80s and the 90s. It's not the language of the 21st century. In the 21st century, people are looking much more at human rights and this and that and all kinds of things. You don't have to go and describe what exactly the army is or anyone else is empowered to do. At that time it was. Okay, fine. That's why. So we put in a lot of detail into it. Today, my mind, the way I look at ASPA is you only need 2 parts of it. One is empowering the army to make sure that it can operate without reference to any other authority. And number 2, protection to the soldier in case of making an inadvertent mistake in the conduct of his duties. These are just 2 sections of it which need to be covered on 2 lines each. And the rest of ASPA should be in the form of attachments and notes. This includes the do's and don'ts of the of the Supreme Court of India. It includes the humanization of conflict, the manner in which India has done it through the operations of Bhavna adopted in 1997. It can be done through attachment of the standard operating procedure which the Indian Army follows in cordon and search operations. We are one of the few armies in the world which, if it goes to search a house at night, it will never enter the house if there are women in that house and you don't have women police. And if you don't have women police, it's clear direction that you will get a local member of the clergy, a Maulvi, who will accompany you. If he is not available, you will get a gentleman over the age of 65. You don't find armies around the world who have these kind of provisions. So, ASPA has got a tremendous amount of human aspect built into it over a period of time that has not got captured in the form of the act itself. So perhaps it's a time to revisit the act. Revisit the act not to make it benign, but to redraft it so that the world starts looking at it from a different angle. The Kashmiris look at it from a different angle. The media looks at it from a different angle. Unfortunately, a perception has been created that this is a draconian law. Ask me, I was subject to ASPA. All my soldiers were working under ASPA. And I know that without ASPA, I could not have operated. So it's necessary, absolutely necessary in the same manner in which it is there, but it should be reproduced in a different form. Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir, for this elaborated discussion and enlightening us basically on the effect of abrogation of Article 370 and the very nature of the AFSPA. And we're sure that this bifurcation will have positive effect in the valley. Sir, now my next question is about the rehabilitation of vast majority of Kashmiri population that has to leave their houses in the valley and were either stationed in the refugee camps or had to relocate across the country or world over. Now, with the abrogation of Article 370, do you think that the situation is in control for the safe return of the displaced population back into the valley?
Very interesting question, Ashish sir. An unexpected question. I'll have to do a little explanation to you. I don't want to go into the backdrop of it. Everyone is aware that so many hundred thousands of Kashmiri Pandits were evicted and for what reasons they were evicted. But let me tell you, in the world outside the military, a lot of people think that absence of violence in a particular area is normalcy. There couldn't be anything further from the truth. Absence of violence does not mean normalcy. Because violence may just be festering. The networks may all just be there. All the capability may just be there, like Pakistan's capability. They've demonstrated it recently. Suddenly, in 1st of April, you found an upsurge of activity. 16 major operations have been conducted in the month of April by the army. So, if there was normalcy, as we were claiming, these operations shouldn't have been conducted. What I'm trying to say is, you can reduce violence and then stabilize the society, stabilize the governance, introduce democracy, do whatever you wish to, right? Over a 3 to 5 year period, an absence of violence will create normalcy. Our habit, and in many of our senior military commanders also, the habit is to rush. You say, okay, one season we have had no violence here. 2 seasons, that means 1 year we have had no violence here. Oh, it's all normal. People like me have made that mistake also, let me tell you. I admit it. I have made this mistake in the past as a senior commander in Kashmir, where I felt my area stabilized completely, there's no violence. Suddenly overnight I was surprised because there were networks all down below the surface, overground worker networks, financial networks, all these things had not been neutralized. It is still going to take us a fair amount of time to neutralize the Pakistani capability to fight a hybrid conflict. By just removing Article 370 and 35A, we have not achieved normalcy. We've still got a way to go. The government of India is doing it. And I think the government of India understands it very well. And therefore, to think of premature movement of return of Kashmiri Pandits or any other evicted people who have been disturbed from there, I think will be extremely premature. Because if we take that decision, take them back there, even at the nascent stages, even on an experimental basis, even if you bring in a few people there and you suffer casualties with them, it will set you back by 10 years. Ask me, because in my time as the Corps Commander, first 1,200 families came, Kashmiri Pandit families, and they were located in different places. We created the camps for them at that time with the help of along with the Jammu and Kashmir government, state administration. We know how much effort had gone in that time and goes in today to protect them. Now, if you bring in so many 100,000 Kashmiri Pandits back, first of all, they will all not want to come back in the situation that we are. It will not want to come back. But even if they want to come back in large numbers, I don't think you can guarantee security and safety to them under the current circumstances. Therefore, I think we are taking the right steps. I think we are moving forward incrementally. And in such situations, the necessity to move incrementally is essential. Let's not hurry.
Yes, sir. So we have spoken about internal things in Kashmir, but army is largely focused on fighting the external aggression. And if you look at the Kashmir issue, there are 2 major external entities with which we are fighting at present and from the historical perspective. There are questions coming in from viewers, one coming in from Ashwat about POK and another coming in from JC about China. And these questions are very relevant. If we look at and you have commanded the eastern sector of Ladakh, so you might be a very appropriate person to answer this question. We talk about the all narrative about Pakistan occupied Kashmir or Azad Jammu Kashmir is circled around Gilgit, Baltistan and Skardu region. But the majority or the neglected regions in that are Chitral and Hotan province, which is a Aksai Chin region. These are significant because of 2 reasons. First, their proximity to Afghanistan and China, and the proposed one road, one belt initiatives flows through that region. So how Indian government looks at these 2 major provinces which are neglected around all the narratives which are building around the Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Okay, so let me take the larger question. This is very, very specific. I will take the larger issue of Ladakh, Gilgit Baltistan, Aksai Chin, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Let me try and roll it all into one. I would strongly recommend Google my article, which is there in rediff.com, the new article uploaded 4 days ago, explaining why these two clashes have taken place in Sikkim and Eastern Ladakh recently with the Chinese troops, PLA. It will give you a measure of understanding as to what China's strategy is and what India needs to do, right? That's an aspect of China. But Pakistan has to be built into it. Remember, first of all, Jammu and Kashmir I wish I had the map with me here, but doesn't matter. Just imagine it in your mind. Northernmost state of India. That includes the entire territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Remove Jammu and Kashmir from India. In your mind, just remove it temporarily. Where will your border lie? Somewhere above Pathankot. Right? Himachal belt, somewhere around Pathankot. Would we be happy with that? Ever? Right? Pakistan would be extremely happy. China would be extremely happy. China and Pakistan would have a broad swath of territory of Jammu and Kashmir to develop as their international border, have their cross connect, have the Belt and Road Initiative traveling from Tibet right through Jammu and Kashmir into Pakistan, to Afghanistan, into the Indian Ocean, etc. That is what the Chinese and the Pakistanis are both looking at in terms of Jammu and Kashmir. Imagine the kind of water that is there. All the water sources are there. Pakistan's entire future depends on those water sources. And that's why they're hell-bent on it. And that is why they will always want to make sure that they retain control over whatever territory of Jammu and Kashmir that they have got under their wings at the moment. Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, Aksai Chin, Chitral, and places like that. This is all important for the larger connect, the Sino-Pakistan connect, the Sino-Pakistan developing narrative together. Because China, remember, considers India not as an enemy. I won't consider counting it as an enemy. Considers it as an adversary, considers it as a competitor for power, comprehensive power in Asia in the future. It knows one thing, that India's strength does not lie on the Himalayan border or in Jammu and Kashmir. India's strength lies in the Indian Ocean. Because of its geostrategic location, India controls the entire sea lines of communication along through the Indian Ocean, which are important. The important sea lanes which are going from the Persian Gulf, south of Sri Lanka, going to the Straits of Malacca, or from the Straits of Malacca going towards the coast of Africa, Madagascar, Mozambique, Kenya, and places like that. This is all to China's advantage. All its energy traffic comes from the Persian Gulf. 80% of its energy comes from here, through the Straits of Malacca. 80% of its container traffic goes from here and goes to Europe, goes to Middle East, goes to Africa. That's how the Chinese economy has been sustained. Now suddenly India develops an economy, a navy which is challenging the preeminence of the developing PLA navy, and you see China's economy will be, or China's whole stature as a world power will be under threat. And if by chance India partners with the United States, Japan, Australia, Vietnam, imagine the state China will be in. China does not want India to develop that. Therefore, it wants us, India, to focus on the Himalayan belt. It will develop a security situation for you from Arunachal right to Ladakh at all times. Every year this will happen. Every year a docklam will happen somewhere. This is all a part of the larger great game. Right? So, China is not going to give up all this very easily. It's very, very important for China. And they need Pakistan for that. They need Pakistan because that keeps India divided. It creates the specter, the threat of a dual front war, which means India has to expend many more resources to ensure that there's a larger land force. Otherwise, if you ask me, to neutralize China, you don't need a large land force. You need a very strong naval force. We have not been able to invest in that so far. So that is the broad strategic aspects. But what China is adept at in playing this game is the three strategies which it adopted in 2003. I take you back to 1990. China was the first country to learn the lessons of the first Gulf War. They came out with a doctrine in 1993 called war under informationized conditions. The power of information, the CNN in your drawing room. And I think people in America know it very well. By 2003, the Chinese had come out with yet another strategy. Yet another doctrine. It was called three strategies. That is, first of all, you need to win a war without fighting a war. You don't have to come into physical blows or throw munitions at each other to win a war. You can win a war by cyber strategy, legal strategy, and media strategy. Media also includes psychological strategy. And that's the system which China has adopted since 2003. You saw in Doklam how they pressurized you. How they pressurized you through all these three domains. There was no intent to go to war ever. And they will not go to war with you. But this is what we need to replicate. We need to replicate this in India on a very big way. You're seeing Pakistan's ISPR. You're seeing China's capability of fighting legal and media wars. In the middle, we can't be sandwiched. We need to adopt capability, develop messages, credible messages into Gilgit-Baltistan, into Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, into Chitral, into Aksai Chin, into Xinjiang, places all over. The instability of those areas should add to our stability, to our capability. And don't look for specifics. Look for a long-term game. Look for a long-term game. Create turbulence of the mind, instability of the mind. That adds to your advantage. And that's the way I would play this game.
Thank you, sir, for that. There's something very interesting that you talked about the developing strategies that we have. I think one thing that all of us would be really interested in knowing is we'd like to know about the significance of the surgical strikes in India's evolving offensive strategy. I think we talk a lot about the offensive strategy as a whole, but we don't go into specifics. I think it would be important for us to know how the surgical strikes have helped us in our offensive strategy, especially because we weren't using these strategies earlier. And like you mentioned, Pakistan will force India to respond in some way. Was this response a thought-out response from learning from our past mistakes or experiences, or was this a response because of the Pulwama attack specifically? And I think will this how does this strategy mean for going forward? How does this strategy evolve further into surgical strikes? Will this be something that is always going to be something that we consider every time there is a need for a response, or is this one of those situations where we just wanted to show them that you need to back off right now?
Thank you. Very interesting question. The surgical strikes in 2016 on the 27th, 28th of September, 10 days after the Uri strike by the four terrorists, was essentially a calibrated response. This is a very important word, calibrated. Calibrated response by India, with total ownership taken by the government of India. Now, there are a lot of people in India who say that these strikes had taken place before, also through the 90s and early part of the millennium, etc. I don't want to say, I don't want to accept that, agree to it, I don't want to deny it. But I can say this much, that the difference in 2016 was that the government took ownership and backed the army and said, yes, we asked the army to do it. That's the difference it made. Now, it could have chosen in 2016 to go to war. Incident-based response, 2 days, 3 days later, we could have started mobilizing. It could have been like the parliament attack. We could have started mobilizing. Partial mobilization, we could have forced Pakistan to mobilize, or taken Pakistan by surprise by rapid mobilization in certain areas and immediately going in with our integrated battle groups. The so-called cold start strategy, which is really not cold start, it is a proactive strategy, right? All this could have been put into place. But calibration is the important word here. India decided to use a calibrator, which sent out a message. What the government of India did was to send out a message. It was not a message of deterrence. I say it was a psychological message to Pakistan. That, see, the government of India today will not sit back. You do a major strike here, we will come back and get you. Right? And I would say, both in the case of the surgical strikes and in the case of the Balakot strike, which was also a calibrated strike, these were deeply thought out. And in both cases, the important aspect which most people seem to miss out is we struck only the terrorist facility. We did not strike anything else. We know who's behind it. We know what is the organization of the deep state in Pakistan, which instigates, sponsors, controls, and handles this entire. We could have gone after all those. We could have gone after them. We had the capability to do it. We didn't do it. So we've still got that capability in our hands, and we can calibrate it to a higher rung, higher rung. Pakistan seems to live under the illusion that it possesses nuclear weapons, and that India is mortally scared of its nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, a thought process has developed on that side of the border or the line of control that India doesn't have nuclear weapons. They don't realize that if India has to respond with the equal measure, I mean, Pakistan cities will be wiped out, they'll be vaporized. But look here, we are sensible people. We don't talk all this. We don't talk openly about nuclear warfare, because nuclear weapons are not weapons of warfare. They're weapons of deterrence. And if you think Pakistan is deterring us, it is mutual deterrence in a way. Yet we find that it does not deter us to look to ensure the safety, security, and honor of our country. Honor is a very important aspect. And this messaging was clear, I think, from surgical strikes to Balakot. And God forbid if something else happens now, the next one, which could be of a higher caliber, will convey that message very, very clearly. We may still not go to war, or we may. That option remains with us. And that Mr. Modi, I think, very clearly said it, that given directions to the armed forces to select a time and place of choosing, their choosing, in which they want to respond. Both cases, we responded within 10, 12, 13 days, which is, I think, very, very creditable. So that's the way I look at the surgical strikes. That's the way I look at the Balakot strikes. No one should imagine that these strikes were meant to give a message that we can only go in once, or tell our own population that we can go in once. This is a clear message only, that the window remains open. We can go beyond. We can escalate this to a higher level. We have the economic strength and capability, resilience. Pakistan doesn't have that. And Pakistan expects that China will come to its aid. It will not happen. Let me assure you. Internationally, Pakistan is being painted black and white. FATF, they're already under FATF, and FATF is a formality. The rest of the world knows it very well. So I think this is the manner in which I read the surgical strikes. The very strong messaging which they conveyed. I think you're muted, Kiran. You're muted. Kiran?
Yeah. I'm back. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So thank you, sir. Thank you for taking your time from your busy schedule and talking to us. This is a very insightful discussion we are having, and enlightening us about the Kashmir current issue, and most importantly, showing the larger picture. I think I've realized that when it's a military leader, it's not a military leader, but it's a expert on multifaceted subject. It's geography, history, international relations, business, politics, culture, everything. So this was really enlightful. So I would like to thank you on this discussion, and thank you viewers for watching and sending your questions. Hope most of our questions were answered. Sir, we look forward to more future collaborations and interactions with you.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to do that.
And it was, I believe our viewers also enjoyed this discussion, and we'll stop our discussion here. Thank you.